Welcome everybody. My name is Clever and I am the Partner Relationship Manager at ByteSpeed. And thank you for coming, and uh, I'll let Matt take it over from here. And we're excited that Matt is here to talk about the wonderful things that Juniper does with healthcare.
Awesome. Very good. Clever. Thank you for having me. And most importantly, thank you for ByteSpeed for allowing us this platform to really, talk about what exciting things are happening in the Juniper world, if you will. My name is Matt Roberts. So I'm our healthcare practice lead here at Juniper Networks. I've been with the company roughly 3 years now, and I'm responsible for our healthcare vertical. We categorize healthcare as multiple segments, okay, subsegments. We've got your providers, so hospitals, health systems, long-term care, physician offices, ambulatory facilities. You get into diagnostic imaging centers, labs, et cetera. The second swim lane or segment would be the payer industry, which we serve well, as well as the life science segment, which is a very big segment of its own, biomed, biotech, pharma, medical device industry as well. So anyway, I've been here 3 years. Prior to that, I spent 6 years at Brocade, if you're familiar with Brocade, leading our IP global healthcare strategy. And then prior to Brocade, I spent 10 years at Cerner Corporation, living in and outside of hospitals and ambulatory clinics. So today I'm going to be providing you an update as it relates to Juniper Networks, as I mentioned, some of the trends we're seeing, and then also how our portfolio, because we have made some acquisitions that I think will be interesting to some folks here, how our portfolio really continues to evolve, and really how we're changing the viewpoint of the network in these medical environments. Okay. So, some of you may be familiar with Juniper Networks, others maybe not so much. I'm just going to spend a few seconds here highlighting who we are and really what we do. We're a $4.5 billion company. We are focused strictly on networking and security. We've got over 9,000 employees around the world. We're in 43 different countries. Really, if you know of our history, maybe you don't know of our history, we cut our teeth in the service provider world. And so we've taken that same carrier grade mindset. So think high performance, high availability approach over into the enterprise. And so when we start talking about vertical markets, I am obviously the head for our healthcare vertical. We also have expertise in higher education, K through 12 environments, oil, gas, energy, state and local, and that list goes on and on and on. And so, the good part here is that, we started at very high intense environments where network disruption is not tolerable. It's 24/7, 365, and maps very well to healthcare, as well. So it is a top 3 vertical for the company. We have had, double-digit growth revenue the past 2 years. And actually, as we have just wrapped 2020, we should still see that trend intact, even with the COVID-19 distractions. We have 4 of the top 10 largest US health systems relying on our technology today as well. One thing I will point out, this slide has a lot of data points on it. We did make an acquisition in the spring of 2019 with a company called Mist Systems, who specialized in Wi-Fi and artificial intelligence. And now that's been deeply integrated into our switching, our routing, and our security portfolio. And so we are seeing significant traction across many verticals, let alone healthcare. And when you start to see the Amazons, the Googles, the Facebooks, and the Walmarts of the world start adopting this type of technology, you're doing something right. You're doing something bleeding edge. Okay. So I'll kind of leave it at that, if you will, and I won't beat you up with too much here, but we realize there are a lot of challenges that are in place today in the network environment. We also realize, from a security perspective, things are not getting any better as far as the cyber criminal activity. So we'll talk about some of those trends that we're seeing here just shortly. Newsflash, real quick. Some of you might have caught the news, some of you may not, but Juniper Networks has now made a leap in the pack. We are now sitting at the top of the leader quadrant when you look at wired and wireless LAN infrastructure. I get excited, our company gets super excited. And again, we know we are doing something right and we're doing something differentiated within our customer environments, right? When you start to see a leap of what we saw between the 2019 Magic Quadrant, where we were a bit further down, if you will, and to the left. And now we are up in the leader quadrant over, some of our main competitors in this particular industry. So anyway, exciting news there. Also on top of that, one of the things I would also say, if you look at the security presence, SS Labs has come out with some really good stuff about our especially highest rating for our SRX product line, IDC, Gartner, Forrester. They continue to give us accolades for our data center technologies as well. So all in all, we are making good strides at Juniper, and we're solving a lot of really a lot of challenges for our customers across all different types of industries. Now, here are a few trends that we're seeing. So with a lot of devices, right? It's rapid. And the applications that are being deployed really within the four walls of the healthcare enterprise, and then obviously out into the the LT-PAC community as well. Infrastructure still faces a lot of challenges, right? And experience is important, and we'll talk and hone in around what experience really means. But there's a lot of band-aid networks that are also in use today. And as those apps and workflows and devices, right, become more sophisticated and they get deployed more and more and more, it only exposes more network bottlenecks. And so what we tend to see, right, there's a lot of outdated infrastructures that really are still a manual system of layers of switches, VLANs, security products, and it makes really for costly upgrades, one, but then also operationally, it makes it very complex. Okay. And so meanwhile, all that's happening and you're still having a massive amount of phishing, DOS attacks, DDoS attacks, excuse me, ransomware, and swarms of just new cyber threats, right, that are popping up. I know the 2020 data hasn't been officially published yet, but I think 2019 still said that really around 41 million patient records were breached in the US here, which was 3 times what was recorded in 2018. So we know healthcare information is rich. We know it's important to safeguard users, applications, infrastructure. We treat it a little bit differently at Juniper, opposed to some of the security companies and that are within the industry today. We'll talk briefly about it here in a few minutes through our what we call a connected security offering. But at the end of the day, we realize that these types of environments, nobody does it all, right? It's really an epitome of a best of breed ecosystem. I equate it as literally saying, how many locks do you have on your front door at home? I can assure you that most of you probably have more than one. In fact, probably most of us have 2, as well as an alarm system, maybe even a Ring doorbell, right? And joking aside or not, maybe even a German Shepherd in the house behind the door. But my point is there's multiple ways, right, in which we should look at safeguarding data. And it's important to have that posture, right, as we look at all the different threats that are emerging, and we'll continue to just flow through, if you will. And treating the whole network as an enforcement domain is a differentiated way to look at this as well. We've talked about the devices. I'm not going to beat you up there, but cloud. Okay, a lot of organizations are naturally looking at cloud, whether it had historically been more private, then it became more hybrid, and now with public. But cloud management tools, they were okay in the past, but they've made it a little bit easier over time to actually do multi-cloud operations, and so being able to deploy and operate. But challenges still remain, right? So security, again, is a fundamental issue that can't be ignored. And so you've got cloud providers, they've got appropriate protocols and tools that ensure their offerings are safe, right? And the party for securing the data itself still lies really in their hands. And so in your hands, so to speak. So, traditional security tools, they aren't built to protect the cloud data that's accessed from off-premise networks. And so when you begin moving data from on-premise solutions to the cloud, you've got to think about different threats and vulnerabilities where those gaps may exist. And so as the number of cloud services continue to adopt, and if you're moving that direction, you've got to also look at monitoring the data flows, and those can be increasingly challenging as well. And that's where, that's where visibility becomes extremely important as it relates to understanding what is happening within the infrastructure. Now, if we talk about the medical campus, right? So if we drill down a little bit deeper, you've got a lot of things that are happening, right? There's a lot of challenges within traditional medical networks. Complex, as we said, devices and data are only going up. You've got existing infrastructure and solutions that are built for management, to be fair, and they're not actually built to help IT become more agile and to be more flexible, and let alone to have data being fed to you opposed to you having to dig in. So have that network work for you opposed to vice versa, you having to dig into that network and spend time troubleshooting. They also lack AI, right? And machine learning. You've got cloud agility issues, and you also have the ability, to not tap into the API, mantra, if you will, And so we're starting to see the emergence of that to help with automation. And really what it comes down to is either expediting rollout and or management of the infrastructure. We're doing it naturally, starting with wireless with our acquisition of Mist. We brought it over into our wired portfolio, which we'll talk about. But at the end of the day, we're making things much more simple than what they have been in the past. And then also the last little bolter, we'll talk about in some of the use cases a little bit later in the presentation around reducing risk as employees actually return back to work. We've got a unique solution that allows you to, possibly implement what we call, proximity tracing, contact tracing, being able to understand who and where your user journeys are within the organization. And we'll go through that here shortly. Now, harnessing the power of network and AI, right? Because traditionally networks do not have AI. Gone are the days, honestly, of the general perception that the network's good enough, right? And so the network being up is actually not the same as a good experience, especially in healthcare. And so we're pioneering, really what it comes down to is a deep level of insight around service levels, event correlation, understanding the health of the switch, getting deep packet captures, and really, flushing out, if you will, annoying elements that traditionally you've not been able to get good insight on, and that's bad cabling, misconfigured ports. And so the more insight that we can provide around really what it comes down to, a user or a device experience, we believe fundamentally will make a difference in the entire experience that's delivered across all verticals, let alone healthcare. Now, we also know headless wired IoT devices, they can't phone home to the help desk, right? Or they can't call IT when connection issues arise. And there's a lot of headless wired IoT devices in healthcare. Think refrigerators, think physical security cameras, think MRI machines, right? There's a lot of things that are there in place that you just don't know necessarily what's happening around the device and the utilization and the services that is being, or what services are being run through those, if you will. So within our platform, we can actually set parameters to proactively alert the IT staff if any, let's say, SLE connection drops below 80%. So we're really tying the wired and wireless together to bring a whole new level of assurance to every organization, okay? And so when you talk about automation, the tagline says it all. We believe machines should configure machines. And so we hate that our teams have to continue chasing configuration issues due to human error, right? Because human error is the number one issue for downtime. And we believe that machines should, to be fair, configure machines. And so, what that means is, we should at least be able to have changes being made or recommended, right, before taking action, but allow the smarts to exist within an AI data science toolkit and learn from the network, learn from the devices, learn from the environment to make the network and the accompanying systems, applications, devices, and all the underlying infrastructure become smarter. And we'll talk about exactly what that looks like here in a few minutes. But this might be the most important topic in healthcare IT, though. How can we actually take and use that technology to transform for this particular picture, let's say the hospital experience for patients and visitors? Or if you're long-term care, let's say that, you want to be able to check out and capture where oxygen is moving around your facility, or how much time is somebody spending documenting, from a physician perspective inside the four walls of the assisted living facility, because for insurance and reimbursement sake, there's certain thresholds that have to be met, right? For reimbursement. And so, we'll get to a few examples of how Bluetooth low energy and our IoT ports are actually elevating safety profiles of organizations here, and how they actually are providing a quite a unique experience when you start to talk about these types of environments. Now, here's some harsh reality for us, though. Most of you realize in the healthcare setting that the IT team, and typically, most notably the network team, it's always assumed guilty until proven innocent. And finger pointing and those cat and mouse games, they can render hours in the day completely useless. And when 80% of the time is spent actually identifying and locating the problem, we're automatically in reactive mode. And then add on the fact that over 40% of network teams actually say it takes more than 4 hours to troubleshoot a typical issue, whether it's my wireless connection sucks, or the electronic health record's frozen, or the hourglass is spinning. What's up with the network? So all these issues, they're a time suck. I think we all realize that. And the impact of the overall healthcare experience, especially when you don't have the right tools, they can provide deep level insights, suffers. So, we're trying to make things a bit easier. We're trying to streamline things. We're trying to provide new levels of insight that will help IT. So, what if the healthcare IT team could actually use AI to understand who unhappy doctors are, or nurses, or administrators? Maybe where those bad cables, network cables, may reside with the environment that's going to trigger some sort of negative response, maybe in a day, maybe in a week, maybe in a month. What about the time plaguing firmware version anomalies, right? Going out searching for that stuff, or any missing VLANs that are out there. Well, today we're helping healthcare organizations actually do a lot of this, and that's the beautiful part. And so we can use AI to help resolve the issue within seconds, or perhaps we can recommend an action for someone to manually perform the event in the case you don't want the system to actually resolve it for you. And so, when you look at this, this has got direct impact on reducing mean time to innocence, right? So back to the finger pointing game, where we can actually help IT teams reduce the troubleshooting time, and the focus is then placed on actually provisioning and doing other things, opposed to the break fix motions, right? Or troubleshooting motions that have just plagued the industry for decades. And so this is what we all desire, right? And so when we reduce mean time to innocence, life is good, and it's often really good. And I like this quote right here from one of our customers, the ICE manager at El Centro. I absolutely love MARVIS. We'll talk about what MARVIS is here in just a few minutes, but it's our virtual network assistant. This morning I typed in, "How is the network today?" And MARVIS told me everything was good except one AP that was having a problem. It then asked, "Would you like me to investigate?" It really doesn't get better than this. This Juniper Mist network is so intuitive and easy to use. So we'll talk about really what that means. And that's bringing insights to a whole new level. And that's making sure, again, your network has a pulse on it at every second of the day. So our vision at Juniper is to extend AI capabilities that exist on wired and wireless and security today across the entire portfolio. If I wasn't really that clear, I think I'm making it clear through this particular slide. And that's the mission we're on. So telemetry data, if you look at the bottom left, it's where it starts. We feed that into our AI engine, if you will, which continues to learn and learn and learn and boost its efficacy. And so we're now on our third generation of algorithms, which actually help proactively identify and resolve those issues that we were just talking about across all different types of industries and segments, just like we're talking about today with healthcare. And so our virtual assistant, okay, which is named MARVIS, translates those insights actually into actions, which helps us get closer to what our ultimate state of nirvana is. And we believe every organization would believe in this, is the self-driving network, right? Which then simplifies everything for everyone and then boosts experiences on the front end, right? While IT staff isn't just constantly slugging behind to keep up with everything else happening on the front end of the business. So that is our vision. That's our strategy as a company. Now, when we look at this particular slide here, we firmly believe that architecture does matter. And so when I mean we're keeping it simple, we really are keeping it simple. When you start to look at some of our industry competition on the left, there's a lot of boxes, there's a lot of things that have to be put on-prem. When you talk about extra boxes and things being on-prem, those are extra costs, those are extra things that you have to manage. And so our firm belief is that if you can deliver this through a cloud microservices or cloud as a service architecture, each of these functions makes things extremely simple, seamless, and it creates a whole new level of operational efficiency for the organization. Okay. The other interesting part to this particular slide here is not only do we have this in the cloud, right? But we push our updates and roll these updates out. And those can be features, those can be fixes on a weekly basis with no disruption to the end user. Okay. So I equate it to Christmas every week, because you can log in. If somebody submits a service request, maybe they want a new feature, we take those into consideration. 3 weeks down the line, that feature may be added in the set, right? With release notes and yada, yada, yada. So the beauty here, again, this all happens behind the scenes, no disruption, and it truly is like Christmas every week. So there's agility in this. There really is, folks. So When we look here at MARVIS, okay, so what if, again, the hospital or the healthcare organization, long-term care, or a series of nursing homes, right, or life sciences, you had a virtual assistant that was actually built into the network to support your own team of networking experts. Well, now you can. This is an industry first, okay? And this is MARVIS. And so using this conversational interface, it does have natural language processing. We can analyze these requests to speed up, again, troubleshooting like we talked about, and automate really response time and actually perform actions or make recommendations, if you will, to get to the ultimate state of what I call rapid resolution. Okay. So this is reality. This is here. This is only getting smarter. As I mentioned, we're in our third iteration again of our data science toolkit. And so based on those algorithms and based on your environment, MARVIS and the entire, if you will, machine learning experience just continues to get smarter every week, every month, and every year. And so a few things that MARVIS can do: firmware upgrades, we can do authentication failures, right? Missing VLANs, it can add them for you. We can fix misconfigured ports, the bad cables. You can simply go out and here say, who are my unhappy users, right? Or do I have any problems with the network today? And MARVIS will go scour the entire network and pull back any perhaps issues or maybe items that might not meet the SLE requirements, so that you are, as an IT staff, alerted to what might be going on to the network that could possibly cause a problem later down the road. Okay. Some other little interesting pieces here too, since we were talking about this AI machine learning experience. We've actually, you've got some exciting news here. We've taken that same machine learning capabilities and we've brought it over to our EX and our SRX product line. Okay, we call this wired assurance. And this really changes the game in which, in the way networks are one, deployed, and two, they're managed. So with zero touch provisioning and easy template configuration there, so the first two lines, you're now able to roll networks out much, much faster. And then when you add in bullet number 3 there, the detailed SLEs such as switch health, maybe again, the identification of bad cables or misconfigured ports, you now have this intelligence, right? This intelligence internally here of this network working for you, posing to your team, or have your team digging into the network itself to identify the problems that may exist, or maybe the potential problems that nobody's aware of at this current time, just because the intelligence hadn't been there in the past. And so this is really important when you talk about, again, those headless devices. So we talked about, cameras and refrigerators, MRI machines. There's hundreds of different connected devices in healthcare facilities, right? All around the world and all across different segments. And so we realize those devices, they aren't smart enough to call home, right? They're not smart enough to call the help desk. And this is where you help, or this is where the system can help you with gap visibility, if you will. And so understanding what is happening in these environments and helping, if you will, resolve things before they actually become problematic. The other interesting thing here too is that we're not only doing this across our portfolio, but we're actually providing insights for multi-vendor. So think Aruba, think Cisco Meraki. We're able to do the things that are on the slide right here. So switch firmware compliance, switch AP affinity, power compliance. You can figure out the inactive wired VLANs, the missing VLANs that aren't configured. And then also switch outage blast radius to mobile users. So understand which users are at risk due to an outage that happened to take place on a particular switch. Okay. So the cool part is, again, don't have to have all Juniper necessarily, right? We can actually take this and build it across some of the competitor landscape. Now, here's where it becomes very, very interesting too. So we talked about what we've been doing as it relates to tying the portfolio together. Now, when we start to look at the world of IoT, we understand that everything in healthcare will be digitized at some point in time. Internet of Things, Internet of Medical Things, right? It's here, right? And it's only getting bigger and it's only getting more sophisticated. And it's not only within the facility, but it's now making its way to the medical home, right? And as you look at maybe your watch that you have, it could be a Fitbit, could be an Apple Watch, that's collecting metrics on you, whether that's being contributed to perhaps a system at some point in time for data input, my point here is that being aware of all the different types of devices and the user experience on the network is absolutely paramount and game changing when you start to look at building a network for the next decade. And so there's four really pillars, if you will, here. Personalization, and we'll go through some of these in more detail in just a moment. But what if you could provide indoor navigation through Wi-Fi, not overlay systems, and I'm talking RTLS systems or indoor navigation systems, but what if you could do it over Wi-Fi? What about indoor informational push notifications, maybe for COVID-19 protocols, maybe for hazard, right? Maybe for digital couponing for somebody that you want to serve up a coupon to, or a certain population on Tuesdays at 11:30 a.m. for the cafeteria or for the coffee shop or gift shop. What about a concierge service? We'll talk about that a little more detail here in just a few minutes, but there's a real aspect of driving personal engagement now through Wi-Fi, and that's through the VBLE experience, okay, virtual Bluetooth Low Energy. What if you could also take a look at different critical medical assets in the environments, whether that's oxygen tanks, whether that's wheelchairs, whether that's vacuums, maybe ventilators, right? Infusion pumps. That list goes on and on. You probably are used to overlay RTLS systems in this particular space today. What if you could do this over Wi-Fi, possibly cutting out some of the overhead required with RTLS systems, or maybe integrating into existing RTLS, but not having to manage the costly beacons and asset tags and those things that have traditionally been, deployed in all sorts of types of healthcare environments. What if we can understand where the patient is and implement safety mechanisms like door locks, electronic door locks? What about tracing and timing? We'll go through these here in just a second, but my point is that we're now changing and kind of flipping the head on this and entering into some very, very workflow oriented processes, if you will, that can drive better outcomes for healthcare organizations over the network. Okay. And then on the back end of it, we're talking about operational workflows, device and user utilization of certain things, traffic flow with congestion points on the network, all the metrics, right, that can be supplied through our dashboarding mechanisms. Not let alone the cost savings, not only at CapEx, but also OpEx for operational means. And then again, with MARVIS and some of the things that we have to help really improve troubleshooting so that you can get your mean time to innocence fixed rather rapidly, opposed to waiting for days, weeks, or possibly even months if you've got something really plaguing the environment. These are some example customers that leverage our JUNIPER technology today. I won't go into deep detail here, but just wanted to share that obviously, a lot of customers do trust on us in the healthcare world. I do want to highlight one particular customer. This is the Veterans Affairs, so the VA health system, particularly the Orlando VA Medical Center in Lake Nona. Those of you that may not be familiar here, but this is the newest hospital build within the VA, okay? And so down in Orlando, they built this 1.2 million square foot medical center. It's got roughly 315 beds. It's a 65-acre campus. Very, very, very big, facility. And there's some outlying facilities you can see within the medical campus there on the screen where people can get lost. And so the organization's leaders and the C-level folks, they built this beautiful campus, but what they ran into right away was that patients and guests were not able to find their way around. That resulted in either late appointments or missed appointments. And so what they sought out was a new way, because this organization was considered and is considered the innovation center for the VA health system. They wanted to find a new way to deliver an experience that would help people, and most importantly, the 400,000 plus veterans and their families to get from point A to point B, maybe to point C, right, and back within their experience within the medical center and the surrounding campus. So what did? They ended up deploying over 5,000 missed access points that has our patented antenna array, but also in that antenna array, it allows for virtual Bluetooth Low Energy, okay, to help drive indoor navigation step by step, turn by turn, as soon as the patient were to walk in the door. They can use some of the physical kiosks that were there and they were served up, or through a mobile app experience, they could actually get this at their fingertips where they could select where they needed to go, recognized because the Bluetooth was enabled on the phone. They would pick up where they were within the facility itself, and then the navigation would take over through the mobile app experience, navigating them to their appointment destination, if you will. And so what I'd say here as well is not only were they able to provide step-by-step, turn-by-turn navigation via Wi-Fi. Again, they developed an app, right? And they worked on an app, and that requires mapping, and it requires obviously some of the location stuff to make sure that it all works fine and dandy. But it's our access points that are driving the pinpoint accuracy of understanding where somebody is based on location. That also served up an interesting use case where they could then, as I discussed a few moments ago, they could serve up a coffee, or they could serve up a digital coupon, or they could serve up a push notification around COVID-19 protocols and what to expect within the environment as soon as they walked in the door. And so that's done based on a location, right, or a spot. And this is all done through virtual beacons where you can plot out through your floor mapping and through the technology where you want the technology to then hit those folks with a mobile app experience and to push a notification based on proximity. Okay. And so very, very unique. Not a lot of places doing this, right? And this is pretty bleeding edge when you start to look at, again, driving out engagement. The other interesting experience here too as well is that they developed an Uber-like experience through this app, so that if someone were to walk in the front door and they did not see, let's say, a wheelchair that was handy and they needed a wheelchair, you typically have to go to that triage area, right, into the volunteer section where somebody would probably be working at the desk. They would make a call to get a wheelchair. Well, now you can actually use the mobile app to do a call down button, or a click down button, if you will, to select a request. And a special request could be a wheelchair. They know where you are based on your location. And that wheelchair then request would get signaled out to the staff team, the triage team, to then locate a wheelchair and bring that to you, knowing where you are within the facility. And then the service is then deemed complete, right, once that ask is being done. So we kind of call that an Uber-like experience, if you will. And then understanding the vents, right? Vents were massive through the COVID pandemic, and they still are. So understanding where those ventilators were, but then also understanding where the wheelchairs were, where the vacuums were, where the pumps were. They're able to manage and monitor those things as well through 1 to 3 meter accuracy. And so I teeter on more of the 1 meter, and it's very, very good. And you're starting to see more and more of these use cases emerge, right, into retail, into higher education, and manufacturing. A lot of different use cases that are popping up to help drive point of sale. This particular thing, efficiencies around locating assets or driving a whole new level of experience for particular patients and guests. Another thing I'll point out real quick on this slide is elevating the safety profile of the organization. And you might wonder what that really means, but with the Veterans Administration, you run into PTSD, unfortunately. We all realize that that's very real. And unfortunately with PTSD, some patients are at flight risk, right? And so making sure that you can elevate safety profile of the organization by keeping the doors locked, and managing and monitoring the safety functions of the wing, if you will. And that can be done through the IoT port connectivity and the access point. And that can be tethered into, for this particular example, let's say Stanley door locks, their electronic door locking system. So as the patient who has a wristband on that is Bluetooth enabled, if you will, they get 10 feet from that door will remain locked. Okay, it will not unlock. Now, that's for flight risk. Now, if they're with a social worker, if they are with a clinician, whether it be a nurse, a doctor, LPN, whatever that looks like, that credentialed person would have an override so that they can get in and out of those doors naturally as expected. So what the system can do is it can be smart enough, seeing that the patient happens to be right next to the credentialed medical person. That medical person obviously has credential override, where they can then walk out that door with that particular patient to maybe another appointment within the facility, maybe to a common area, maybe to a cafeteria or gift shop, etc. So anyway, real life use cases that we are seeing. We're also seeing, and I use the title here, moving beyond the traditional bits and bytes, because as most of you probably are aware, the network in the past wasn't the most sexy thing, right? You were just passing data to and from. But when we can actually get involved and change clinical workflows or help with clinical workflows, you are really changing the dynamics of, again, using the network to do things that have never, ever been done before. So safety measures with COVID-19, proximity tracing, contact tracing, as organizations look to get people back into the workforce, right? In one case, hospital, or maybe use long-term care or senior living, seeing where people are moving around the facility, staying, let's say, within 6 feet, right? And, understanding where hot zoning might be. So if you've got a congregation of 12 people in one area, knowing where those hot zones are, and then sending out alerts, dispersing those hot zones. Those are all different things that are naturally popping up and driving certain use cases, and really helping, one, understand a user's journey, but two, on top of it, really helping the organization bolster their safety profile as well. So, that's real. The other part here too is that I want to point out that the indoor location services for 2020, we are on the furthest right. You will find that we are the only networking vendor that is there. And so as you see this, it's very, very interesting, right? There's a lot of RTLS companies, but we are moving further right and up. So just take note of that, because I think that's a very important topic on how Wi-Fi and VBLE really can be a instrumental IoT platform. So how to get started? There's ways to look at this, whether you've got replacing an old network and a natural refresh, or expanding on a new network, or fixing bad networks, right? Or even just jumping into a greenfield opportunity and you want to do a location aware network. So we've got the ability to do a lot of this stuff. So, what I'd encourage you to do is visit www.juniper.net/healthcare for more info. Contact me anytime. Happy to do that, or Clever from ByteSpeed. And we'd be happy to jump in to have a conversation to see and listen to maybe what challenges you're faced with. And, if those challenges are something that we can possibly help you with as well. So with that, I'd like to say thank you, and I'll pause, and Clever, I don't know if we have any questions or anything on the line.
Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. And as I mentioned in the invite email, we are showing our appreciation of your time today through a $25 gift card, Amazon gift card. Now, to redeem that, you just have to complete a survey, just letting us know some information, including your address and such. So once the webinar ends, you'll be able to access that survey. It also will be in a follow-up email at the end. So thank you again for your time. And if you have any questions, now is the time.
Looks like no questions yet. I don't know if that's good or bad. Maybe I answered them all.
You did such a great job.
No, I really appreciate everybody's time and hopping on here. I get excited because I've been in healthcare for 20 years, and what we're seeing and what we're delivering now is truly different. It really is. And so when you can start talking about how to make specimen transit more efficient, within hospitals, and how you can help people find certain equipment, but then also deliver new experiences that really impact, again, us as being consumers and patients and guests, like our family members, and you're doing it via the network, you're starting to now see that the network becomes a much more strategic asset for the organization, opposed to just the traditional, utility service, right? And we wanted it to be a utility service. The network should just work. But again, I always like to say the network should work for you as well, right? Being IT side and IT staff. And so there's a lot of things that are in place today, which hopefully you heard about, that, we can possibly look at maybe solving from a challenge standpoint, because there is a lot of pain, right? There's a lot of pain in regards to some of this stuff.
Absolutely. So yeah, if anyone's interested in whether it be demos of particular units or such, just get in touch with me. Matt can help there, and we can get you in touch with Juniper representatives that can help you out there. But otherwise, thank you so much for coming, and make sure to fill the survey so I can get you information and get you the gift card. So thanks again, and have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you all. Much appreciated. Thanks, Clever.
All right, now, bye.